Hey, croeso, welcome to the Social Sciences Masterclass. My name is Dr. Sean Jones, and we also have...
Hi, my name is Dr. Charlotte Brookfield.
And we're both based in the School of Social Sciences in Cardiff University. And in this sort of masterclass, we're going to give you a bit of a taster of the research we've carried out within the social sciences. So we're going to talk about research we carried out as part of our PhDs. So that's why we're both doctors now. We became doctors because we sort of we carried out research for our PhD and we were examined on it. And just to sort of explain, so PhDs, so what we both did was we both studied within the School of Social Sciences, Cardiff University, so we did our undergraduates here, and then we did a master's course then, and then we went along then to do a PhD, and both of our PhDs were funded as well, and you can get funding to do your PhD. So we're part of the furniture really in the School of Social Sciences. So I'll move on to the next slide.
Yeah, so as Sean said, we're going to tell you a little bit about the research that we both did a few years ago now for our PhD projects, and broadly we're both interested in researching and investigating topics that are related to education or fall in the field of education. However, we've both used different approaches when we've gone about this. So I've used in my research what we call quantitative methods, so methods that allow us to collect numerical data to analyse and undertake statistical tests to explore relationships between possible variables or possible demographic groups and things like that. Whereas Sean's opted to use a more qualitative approach where the resultant data is either perhaps textual or in some instances visual, to understand sort of the feelings, attitudes, aspirations in Sean's case of young people. So while we're kind of very loosely looking at similar issues and often engaging with educational theorists and literature that is similar and perhaps even crosses over, how we've done that is slightly different. And we're hoping that at the end of this masterclass, we've kind of given you a little bit of an insight into the different approaches that can be used. Okay, so we're going to start by talking about my research. So I've called this, what does it add up to, the place of number in the social sciences? And my research has really looked at the different methods that have been used in the social sciences to undertake research. And I've been really interested in this presentation just to talk to you about what's being used in British sociology. So I have done a little bit of research looking at the discipline in other countries, so looking at New Zealand and also looking at the Netherlands. And I've also done some research looking at other social science disciplines. But for these slides, I'm just going to talk about sociology in the UK. And for my PhD research, I sent out a survey to higher education institutions or universities where they had sociology departments, and people were either teaching sociology or they explicitly stated in their short bio on their website that their research fell within the area of sociology. And I asked them about the methods that they used when they were doing their research. And as you can see from this first infographic, all the people in yellow there represent the people that said they use quantitative approaches, so use those numerical approaches that I just mentioned. And that was about 10% of my respondents. And I should say this was about 400 people that replied to this survey. So about 10% using quantitative methods. And then in terms of qualitative methods, we can see that actually it was almost 60% of the survey sample said that they used qualitative methods in their sociological research. And then about the last sort of third, so about 30%, were saying that they used a mixture of both quantitative and qualitative methods in their research. So even if we combine those that use some quantitative methods, if they're a mixed methods researcher, with those that said they just use quantitative methods, the proportion is still smaller than that using qualitative methods. And we'd kind of expect to anticipate that that split should be more 50-50, but we can see here that doesn't seem to be the case. And looking on this second sort of infographic that I've got on the slide here, we can see that these were the different approaches that the survey participants reported using. And those methods that appear larger or in larger text are those that were reported with the greatest frequency, while those that are appearing much smaller were the ones that were used with less frequency. And again, I think this kind of is very clear straight away that it was the qualitative approaches that seemed to be used with the most predominance among the survey sample. So you might say, so what? What does this have to do with anything? How does it relate to education and why is it important? Well, I think, first of all, there were concerns surrounding the impact that social research can have on sort of things like policy and practice if we do not engage with a variety of different methods and different approaches. If we've got little or no quantifiable data, it's really hard to engage sometimes with policymakers to actually encourage change to happen. But also, without engaging with quantitative methods, what we actually end up seeing is that potentially we are ghettoising ourselves from other disciplines. So we can't necessarily engage with perhaps geographers or with economists because we're not speaking almost the same language if we're not using these techniques. But perhaps even more of a shame is that we're potentially narrowing our possibility to engage with academics in other countries as well, which again stops that possibility for comparative research, which could be really interesting and really insightful. But I think the other concerns that have kind of come out of this are really more important and probably of more interest to me, which is about actually this potential narrowing of the curriculum that our students are receiving. So because we don't have researchers that are potentially well-versed or confident with quantitative methods and don't use them in their own research, does that mean that we are now delivering to students a shrinking curriculum where they don't see the importance of these methods or the relevance of them to their studies, or they don't even know how to use them in some instances and apply them to their own problems or social interests? And on the next slide, I have got a quote that kind of encapsulates this. So this actually came from one of my survey participants when I was asking them about their views on British sociology and to sort of talk about their own research in this survey. There was open text boxes, so although it was predominantly quantitative data, I did get some quotes, and this is one that I think encapsulates kind of what I just tried to say about why this is potentially an important problem to explore in more depth. So when I give my judgment on British sociological research, I take into account, 1, the poor visibility of the discipline and hence its attractiveness for future potential bright students. 2, the poor link that exists between policymakers and sociologists, not systematic, but rather sporadic. 3, the poor training on methods and theory and the reduced chances for interdisciplinary research. Young sociologists are often not able to cooperate with other disciplines, which are more likely to attract funding. So here, this researcher who responded to my survey has really taken what I just said to you and nicely summarised it in a quote that actually this methods teaching is really important to enhance the visibility of the discipline and therefore its attractiveness to young people, which we always want to encourage to come and study the social sciences. But also it's perhaps weakening that relationship between policymakers and sociologists, and meaning that other people in other disciplines that potentially have the quantitative skills but not the sociological insights are actually getting to inform policymakers over sociologists with these potentially really valuable insights. And then, as I said, this perhaps really worrying implication that the training that the students are receiving is actually reducing their opportunities to see what quantitative methods can do and the questions that they can help us answer, and our opportunities therefore to engage with other disciplines and to attract funding. So on the next slide then, I'm just going to tell you about what I'm doing now. So as Sean said at the start, this is based on our PhD research. So it was a couple of years ago, and I'm going to bring you up to date a little bit. So fast forward slightly. And as I said, for me, the most interesting part about all of this is thinking about the students. It's going back to the core value of the education and how we train students in quantitative methods. So what we're looking at now is I'm actually doing a content analysis of students' dissertation projects. So students often opt to do a dissertation in their final year. It's an extended piece of writing exploring a research problem that they are particularly interested in. And we have been doing a content analysis to look at the different topics that students are studying for their dissertation and the methods that they are using. And we're trying to see if we can find any relationships or associations between perhaps the training that students have had in quantitative and qualitative methods, the topics they've chosen, even their gender as well is quite interesting, and the methods that they've chosen. So there's some really interesting things emerging from there. The other thing we're doing is we're actually conducting online surveys with our students this year, our dissertation students, to find out how they came about choosing which methods to use for their dissertation this year. So what factors influenced their decision making there? Was it attainment in previous assessments? Was it perhaps discussions with staff members? Was it looking at existing research in the mainstream journals, and so on and so forth? So we're hoping to kind of bring the findings of those two studies together and really be able to talk about the student experience of using number in the social sciences.
Thank you very much for that, Charlotte. So I'm going to talk now a bit about research that I carried out for my PhD a couple of years ago. So I was interested in young people's aspirations, so what they wanted to do in the future, and focusing specifically on young people's educational and career aspirations. So, so I was interested in finding out whether young people wanted to go to university or not, and what sort of subjects they wanted to study in the future. And what I did was I focused on students who were in year 11, so the final year of compulsory education. So whether they wanted to go into sort of college or sixth form, so that sort of stuff, but also career aspirations. So what sort of jobs do they want in the future? Similar to this sort of child on the left here, whether they wanted to become a teacher or a doctor or an accountant. And what I did was I focused on students, year 11 students from the South Wales Valleys. So the South Wales Valleys is an area that has sort of undergone sort of significant social and economic changes over the past few decades. So I was interested in finding out what the impact of these changes had on young people's aspirations. And as Charlotte mentioned at the start of slides, my research was more qualitative. So what I did was I carried out sort of semi-structured interviews with the students. So I interviewed them, and then what I collected then was qualitative data. So it was very, textual words, very sort of rich data in depth, and then analysed these interviews thematically. So sort of read the interviews and tried to identify any themes that came out from the interviews. And when we're thinking about sort of aspirations, but sort of other stuff as well, such as the choices that people make, people's attitudes. One of the debates surrounding sort of aspirations or choices or attitudes is whether these things are influenced by individual agency, so whether as individuals make our own choices, sort of form our own aspirations or our own attitudes, or whether are our aspirations, are they sort of influenced by social structure? So are they influenced by our family or other institutions such as schools or our community or friends? And so that's one of the things that my research looked at, was whether these young people's aspirations, whether they were influenced by individual agency or social structure. And what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to show you a quote from one of the interviews I carried out. So this was an interview with a student called Joe. Now I've anonymized, so that's not their real name. But Joe here, so Joe said that they wanted to go to university and looking for work after sixth form. So they had long-term aspirations to go into university. And so I asked Joe, well, what is the reason for wanting to go to university rather than looking for work after sixth form? And Joe says, well, my mum left school very early. And so throughout life, she said that, if she could go back, she would change that decision of leaving school very, very early, because she would have had more of a better education. And that's the thing. I don't want to. I want to go far. Yes, I want to go very far in my life. So that's why. So if we analyse, if we look at this sort of interview extract, we could argue that this interview extract provides support to social scientists to believe that aspirations are formed by individual agency. So we can see that for Jo, she wants to go to university. She wants to go far. She wants to go far in life. And so that's one of the reasons why she wants to go to university. But at the same time as well, we could argue as well that sort of social structures also influence Jo's aspirations. She talks about her mother and talks about her regret that she left school very early in her life. And so we can see that her mother's sort of educational trajectory or a trajectory in life had an impact on Jo's sort of aspirations. So I think the point I'm trying to make here is that sometimes it's quite difficult for us to distinguish whether it's individual agency or social structure that has an impact on our aspirations. Okay, so what I've got now in the end, if you want to find out a bit more and if you want to read a bit more about our research, here are sort of links to Charlotte's research and my research as well, our PhD research. So if you want to read a bit more about them, they're available online for free. If you Google those titles, you'll find them. They're quite a long read, aren't they, Charlotte?
Yeah.
So you might want to skim read them. Mine's over 80,000 words, but you might find them quite interesting if you want to have a read of them as well. So I think that's it from us. So yeah, thank you very much for sort of watching the video. There isn't anything else that you want to add, Charlotte?
No, just thank you very much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it.
Hi everyone, my name is Morgan and I'm talking to you today as part of your Social Sciences Masterclass, in the hope of providing you with a good idea of what studying a social science degree looks like at a top university. I myself attended a SERA conference like this one, albeit an in-person version, back in 2017. I attended a Welsh medium state school from year 7 to 13 in a small village at the top of the Swansea Valley. After my GCSEs, I, like a lot of people, thought I wanted to do medicine, but a couple of months into sixth form, I changed my mind and I ended up taking English literature, religious studies, maths and biology at AS level, before deciding to drop biology at the end of year 12. Fast forward 4 years from picking my A level, I'm now in my third and final year at King's College, Cambridge, studying human, social and political sciences. Some of you might have already heard about this course, and it's sold as being open and flexible, which is, I think, one of its best qualities and what I like most about it. It's a social science degree based around politics, sociology and anthropology. So in your first year, most people take a paper on political theory, one on international politics, and some introductory papers into sociology and social anthropology. And you can also swap out one of these papers for a paper from another degree if you want to, such as archaeology or psychology, like I did. Given the sheer breadth of what I was studying in first year, I had opportunities to write essays on topics ranging from the post-Cold War political order and the Anthropocene in my international politics paper, to essays on new forms of kinship and the symbolism of human-animal relationships within social anthropology, and then essays on Marx, social class, and gender and sexuality within sociology. This gave me a really useful foundation for me to work out what I liked and also what I didn't like as much, whilst also improving the way I could formulate arguments through drawing on different parts of my course. I think the benefit of this broad approach to social sciences is quite reflected in the fact that before I even came to Cambridge, I had no idea what anthropology even was, and yet I still decided to fully specialise in it at the beginning of my second year because I enjoyed it so much. It's quite hard to describe what anthropology is, but to put it broadly, it aims to expand our understanding of social and cultural life through challenging the assumptions that we use to think about how the world works. And these assumptions are often heavily based in Western culture. It's a very, very broad discipline, and it allows you to look within and between cultures and cultural institutions. And it encourages you to unpick the ideas, beliefs, and perceptions that shape people's diverse social and cultural lives. I hope that makes some sense to you. In my second year, we learned about, just to give you an example of what I studied, we learned about the foundations of social life, which cut across different topics such as politics, economics, kinship, and religion. We also had a course on theoretical approaches in anthropology and the social sciences more broadly. And then as my 2 optional papers, one of which was the Anthropology of India, which is where I was taught in the form of weekly seminars with 2 world-leading Indian anthropologists. And it really allowed me to kind of deep dive into lots and lots of different topics within the Anthropology of India and to explore my ideas through talking with these academics. I also took a paper on the Anthropology of City and Space, which had a lot of very contemporary literature, which I enjoy reading, and it really demonstrated to me the relevance of anthropology, and even more so in our current political climate. The flexibility of the degree means you can kind of tailor it to be your own, and you can do this more and more as the degree goes on. And I think that the university and the colleges themselves have a lot of resources that encourage you and support you in doing this, in making it your own degree. And I think this is one of the main things that allows you to do well here, is that you're encouraged to be creative and experimental with your ideas and to kind of push beyond the readings that you're asked to do. You're encouraged to follow your own interests and passions. So, for example, I've decided to write my anthropology dissertation this year on queer experiences in rural Wales. And I've been lucky enough to have the tutelage of an academic who specialises in the field of queer anthropology and is able to devote one-on-one supervisions to guide me through my whole project. I should also mention that all of this does require quite a lot of studying, but the amount of time you devote to studying at Cambridge is really dependent on quite a lot of different factors, such as your personal work ethic, just how quickly or how slowly you take to do work, the papers you're taking, and also what year of study you're in. So in your first year, just to give you an idea, you're likely to have about 8 hours of lectures a week, which is 2 hours for each course you're doing. And on top of that, you'll have between 1 and 2 supervisions per week, which is where you and usually one other student or perhaps 2 other students meet with an academic to discuss the essay that you wrote, and they'll give you feedback on how to improve the essay, and then also teach you about the topic more generally. But your timetable will inevitably change throughout your degree. So, for example, as a finalist, my average day in lockdown in England, that is I attend my online lectures in the morning. I usually have 1 or 2 lectures in the morning. Then I have quite a long, slow lunch, and then I'll probably head to a library in the afternoon to read for and write the essays, which is the essays that have been set, which is what you'll spend most of your time working on if you come to Cambridge and other top universities. It's a lot of work, but ultimately you'll learn the skill of reading quite a lot of material on a variety of different topics in quite a short amount of time. And then you'll learn the skill of turning this into an original essay within the space of about 4 days. You'll get a lot of practice of writing essays throughout your degree, which is good because the vast majority of the assessment for this degree is done through timed exams at the end of the year. You'll also get the opportunity, if you want to write a 10,000-word dissertation in your final year, and you might also get the chance to do some coursework in your second year. The amount of essays that you have to write might possibly sound daunting to start off with, but the major upside to this is that you get lots of practice at writing essays that don't count towards any official grade, which does give you quite a lot of room to experiment and make mistakes and not have to worry about them. So the skills and creativity that I think this degree really helps you hone are massively helpful for a wide range of career prospects. Obviously, you'll be well positioned to take up an academic career after completing a Cambridge degree, if you want to, and this is something that many students don't really consider as a viable option before coming to university and realising how interested they are in their degrees. A large chunk of HSPS graduates will go on to work in the public sector, in institutions such as the civil service, local government, the NHS, or social work. There are also other opportunities, for example, to enter the consultancy industry if this is something that interests you. Ultimately, after graduating from HSPS at Cambridge, employers will be keen to harness your skills in oral and written communication. your critical reflection, and also your skills at independent evaluative thinking, which you really get the opportunity to practice over your 3 years here. And I think this is something that's complemented by, especially for anthropology students, a highly multicultural sensitivity and an international outlook. Just as an example of some other careers you could possibly enter with a HSPS degree include journalism, conservation and heritage, development agencies, the law, teaching, publishing, and or public relations. So most importantly, I'd really encourage you to think about the ways in which you can grow and learn through studying social sciences at university, and also for you to be aware of the doors that it can open for you, especially if you're considering studying social sciences at Cambridge. Your genuine, I think at least, your genuine intellectual curiosity will definitely be nurtured here and complemented by the quite extreme wealth of resources and opportunities that the university and the wider community has to offer you, especially you as Welsh state school students. Even looking at the website, or even deciding to apply here, is a step towards more Welsh students taking up space at institutions like this one, which is definitely needed given how underrepresented Welsh students are at these top universities. Thank you so much for listening to what I have to say, and I'll now hand back to the host for instructions on what happens next.
Nawr cofiwch y bydd y dosbarthiadau meistr na ar gof a chadw I chi eto. Over the last 2 days, you've had the opportunity to attend 4 different masterclasses, which if you wish to see more, the series of masterclass content will be available to you to view after the conference is finished. Gobeithio chi gael rhagflas buddiol am y pynciau amrywiol. The conference has hopefully helped give you a feel for what it might be like to study the different subjects at university level. Amser I fyfyrio eto nawr. It's now time to use the next 15 minutes to reflect on all the masterclasses you've seen over the 2 days and build on the masterclass reflection resources you used yesterday. Os mai heddi chi'n ymuno â ni, if you're just joining us today, these will have been sent to you previously or can be downloaded in the lobby area. Ac felly, ewch i'r lobby i'w lawrlwytho. Reflect upon which masterclass you enjoyed most. Beth sy'n mynd â'ch bryd? Which big ideas and research would you like to be a part of investigating when you go to university? Yna, nôl i'r brif stafell I wybod mwy am heno. I'll see you back in the main room at 3:35 for some final instructions before this evening. Gobeithio bod yr adnoddau'n fuddiol i chi. I hope these resources have been helpful for you to put in place the next steps in your learning journey. Defnyddiwch nhw i helpu ddarganfod beth sydd orau i chi. Continue to explore the different options available and use the reflection resources to discuss your options with your parents, teachers and carers after the conference. A dyna ni am y tro. That's the end of this afternoon session. Nôl am 6, head back here at 6 for the last evening session of the conference. Ac mae 'na newyddion cyffrous ar y gorwel. We'll have an exciting update for you about the 2021 Seren Summer Schools and more Q&A sessions. Yeah? Cofiwch am y sesiwn holyg ateb fyw, that live question and answer session on applying for international courses in summer schools. So don't forget to send in any questions. Anfonwch nhw at seren@casba.biz. See you all at 6. Hwyl am y tro.